Hi, welcome to Nurse Talk with Cor and Laur. I'm Karina.
And I'm Laura.
And this week it's Module 7, and our discussion kind of extends from last week's discussion where we were talking about the message boards and posts that people created relating to their health issues.
So this week contains 2 requirements, and we're going to talk about them both separately. The first one is the AHRQ criteria, and the second one is the honeycomb model. So we'll talk about some of those threads and how they relate to those 2 things.
Yes. So with regards to the AHRQ criteria, the first part of that is credibility. So I guess with these message boards, the information isn't necessarily credible. Mm-hmm. It's not to say that it's not true if someone's offering their advice or opinion. If they've had an experience that is very real for them, mm-hmm. and that could be legitimate information. But in terms of the general information about the condition, it's not necessarily credibly sourced or anything like that in what we've observed.
Yeah. No one is in charge of reviewing the information and correcting anything, so to speak. So,
with the content, whether it's accurate and complete, again, it kind of relates to the credibility portion of it. Mm-hmm. However, on the Reddit board,
you have to sort of dig for it. It took me a little bit to find it, but they did have some rules and guidelines, and they specifically said that this is strictly advice and they're not medical healthcare providers. And
actually the next piece of criteria is disclosure, which Laura kind of touched on there. So I believe that covers that as well.
It's simply for advice.
With links, we found this one a little more confusing and hard to figure out. I don't know if it means in terms of if someone offers a link for someone to find more information about it or to take them somewhere else for more information.
Yeah. And the next one, design, the accessibility and the organization of it. I feel it's fairly well organized. It seems to be divided in its own subgroups according to what people are looking at for advice on.
Exactly, yeah. And I found the health boards one as well. It was very nicely laid out with the different topics and seemed pretty easy to navigate for people.
Yeah,
so
I had no issues with that.
So with the interactivity, that discussing the basic exchange of information, and that's what it is generally. That's
all
what's happening.
It is. The final criteria is the CAVITS, and I'm sorry if I say that wrong, but again, in the rules and guidelines, I sort of went down the rabbit hole of finding out information on the site, and they clearly stated that they themselves don't do any advertising, and it's only a third party that would be giving any advertisements on their site in general, but they're not specifically wanting you to buy things or sell things or give you false information. The second part to this week's post is discussing the honeycomb of social media as it pertains to the message board.
One aspect of the honeycomb model is presence, and that's referring to knowing if users are available on the message board. I couldn't really see that so much on the board, but on the health boards I noticed it would say how many people were viewing a topic. So it was showing if 12 people, however many, was viewing the topic, but in terms of who specifically was online, I couldn't see that.
There's no live chat or something that I could find on either website. The second part to the honeycomb is relationships, and that's the extent to which users can relate to one another, and that's mainly what these boards seem to be all about. For example, when I looked up some of the ones on Crohn's, everyone was talking about prep for a colonoscopy, and people who were messaging were all people who have been through it before, so they can all relate to everything.
So the next part, reputation. So that's referring to the extent which users know the social standing of the others. I'm not quite sure. I know it seems people have a username. It doesn't really offer much information about them.
No.
So I don't really think on these boards you're getting a lot of background information other than the information that people are offering.
Yeah, they're willing to share. The next is groups, and that's to the extent of which people form communities or groups. And both these websites seem to be categorizing themselves in their own group. Everyone who seems to form groups has some connection to the topic of the threads. So whether it's Crohn's or it's everyone who's had Parkinson's or neuropathy or something like that, they're all forming their own group within those chat threads.
And next is conversations, and that's the extent people communicate with each other on these boards. And again, kind of how we talked about, that's kind of the main purpose of these. So there are many conversations happening. Some, it seems that once someone has their answer, the threads don't necessarily grow unless someone else comes on and has a question about the same thing.
So sharing is the next component, and this completely varies from thread to thread, from website to website. Everyone's just sharing what they feel comfortable with. Some people overshare, some people don't share much at all. So you're never really guaranteed a certain amount of information when you ask a question. It's just chance.
And finally, we have identity, relating to what we've already talked about, the extent to which people reveal themselves. Again, some are offering a lot of information about themselves, a lot of details about their illness, where they're from, the process of what they've been through.
Photos.
Yeah, that as well.
Yeah.
So really it does vary, but we kind of see a couple extremes there.
So they're two very different criteria measurements. The honeycomb seems more for the personal social media, whereas the ARHQ was more for getting reputable, like peer-reviewed websites. Yeah.
All in all, though, great examples of how we're using technology more and more and relating it to health. And
exploding in popularity, I would say, too. There's lots, like some of these have 24,000 views.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's all we have for this week. So, thank you for watching.
And we'll see you again next week.